Hey y'all, welcome back to the channel. For those of you that are new here, my name is Mark Rapine and I am a photographer based out of sunny Florida. Being here in Florida, we have a lot of wildlife that we can photograph, especially birds. So say about a year ago or so, I picked up a longer lens and I've been having fun photographing birds ever since. Recently, I got the encounter with a screech owl, and I thought it would be fun today to kind of go and show you the post-processing of that, a couple of those images, and hopefully you learn something and pick up some tips and tricks along the way. So yeah, let's just get into it. Okay, so we are here in Lightroom, Lightroom Classic. I've selected 6 different images here that I'm going to run through. You can kind of see the raw images as we go through these in the loop view. And I think I'm going to just start with this one here as my first image to process, and we'll kind of run through what I normally would do to make this image pop a little more. Obviously right now it's a little dark. This was right at sunset, and there wasn't a whole lot of ambient light out, especially for this little guy. He was tucked back behind a tree, so a lot of tree coverage. What little light we had wasn't really making it through. You can see here my settings. So I was already at 1/8 of a second, so very slow shutter speed at this point. f6.3, which was the lowest my lens would go, and ISO 8000, which is pretty high. I was fully zoomed in at my 600 millimeters. And I was using the 150 to 600 Sigma lens. So I had really good luck with this lens. Haven't really had any complaints whatsoever. But now that you know kind of the settings and what we were at, and that kind of goes for I think all of these images. The 2 that are horizontal, they might be a little faster shutter, but not by much. But we can look at that as we go. As you can see here, this is the raw image. I've done nothing to it. I've just imported into Lightroom, straight out of camera. So it's a little dim. You'll kind of see the color. The colors are kind of washed out. It's not very vibrant. So we're going to try and fix a little bit of that and make it pop a little bit. The first thing I would do is up here to color profile. I typically will switch this to landscape. What that does is you see there, if we just toggle back and forth, it kind of just brings out those greens, those yellows, those colors a little bit more. And I like how that the effect that has on my image. From here, I would go ahead and work on my tones. So usually what I do is I hit auto, see where that brings me. Obviously right here, this looks awesome. Really like what it has done. Not going to tweak it too much, but we are going to go ahead and raise the shadows a bit, raise the shadows up quite a bit more. We will also bring, I was going to say bring down the highlights, maybe a smidge more, maybe somewhere around there. The whites I think are probably good right at the 50 mark, so we'll undo that. And then the blacks, I don't really want this to be too black. As you can see there on my histogram, if I push the blacks, I'm giving that little spike right at the tail end, and that's kind of something I want to avoid. So I'll bring it back a little bit to like -10. So that is pretty much what I'll do for my tones. I may bump this up just a bit more, maybe like to a 0.4. Let's see. Yeah, I think 0.4, bring that histogram here more to the center, so that it's the bird isn't as dark as it was in the beginning. So that's pretty much, I think, what I'll do for the tones. Next thing I kind of like to do is the presence. We'll go ahead, texture. In this case, I'm going to bring up, if you hit your up arrow, if you just hover over the 0, hit your up arrow, it will go up by 5 increments of 5. I think I like that at +5, and then the counterbalance that to kind of get more of a ethereal effect, I will go ahead and reduce the clarity a bit, so that it's not super sharp. Sometimes it get a little too crispy, and I don't really like that. The other thing that I will do here is, I think it's just a little too, I'll say, contrasty. So I'll bump up a little bit of that dehaze in the background. I think I kind of like that. So let's go ahead and we'll go before and after, and obviously that just takes it a really long way already. Typically, when I hit the auto button, it will have an effect on the variance or the vibrance and the saturation. I will typically leave these as is, because I like the colors that it's giving me right now. So I'm not going to play with those too much. What I might do is with the white balance, we might want to take our little eyedropper here and go over an area that we know should be like a gray or white, and see what that gives us. And so that will give us a little warmer of a color tone, and it gave us a little more of the pinks. I think that did a pretty good job. Let me just bring this down a bit. See if I like maybe, yeah, I think maybe not as warm. It is still warmer than where we started, but yeah, I do like that. From here, I will go into my curves, and I'll give it, just your standard 3 dots. We'll bring down shadows a bit. We'll bring up those highlights just a bit, and that's a nice little S curve. Bring back some of that contrast in a more natural way, I think. So that looks pretty good. From here, I like the colors that it's giving me, so I'm not really going to play with the HSL slider, so we can leave that closed. Again, color grading, I like the colors, I'm not going to touch them here. Detail, so this is something that I will kind of mention. So usually when I import an image, I will put it at 0, and then later on I'll see if I want to add in the sharpening. And so automatically it starts at 40, and that's going to, with the mask set at 0, that's going to affect the entire image here. Now what you can do with the mask is, if you hold Option, you can click and drag this mask. You can start to see black come into the image. Now wherever there's black, that means it's not going to have an effect in that area. So really what I wanted to do here is I want to get this sharpening off of the background, and I really just wanted to hone in on the bird. So right about 80, it looks like we have a pretty black background, and all that sharpening is going towards the bird and not like the noise that's in the background. The other thing with this detail is I typically will leave the color at the standard 25, but if I did see that there was a lot more color noise in it, I would bring this up to maybe 100. I found it doesn't really degrade the image too much, especially if you're just posting this on Instagram or something like that. So I'm not afraid of the color noise reduction. I am curious, and we may come back to the new noise reduction in Lightroom here at the end, but as we go along, lens corrections is our next tab here. I typically will always check the remove chromatic aberrations. I find that is a good thing in any image that you have. There's no real downside. And then depending on if you like how your lens is vignetting your photo here and there's not too much distortion, you may or may not want to check the enable profile correction. So for me right now, I think I will. It kind of just, I think, brings everything out, and I'll add back in a vignette in a different tab here. Transformation, this is typically for your buildings. For animals, I would not recommend using that. Effect, so this is where you can kind of add back in that vignette. As you can see, you could do a white or a black. I will typically, if I'm going to use this, I will do a black, and I will go probably no more than -20, -25, something like that. Otherwise it becomes way too noticeable. That's pretty much all I'll do in the effects. And then lastly, on this part, I will go into calibration. And this is another place where I found kind of works. It works with adding some pop to the image. If you go down to the blue primary specifically, down to saturation, and you can start seeing kind of the difference this might make in your image. And you can go, if you like kind of that muted tone, you can go that way. If you like more of that color pop, that vibrance, you can go the other way. I will typically put, say, 10, 15 on this, and that's just kind of a little touch of goodness. That's really what all I would touch in here. So here's our before and our after. You can see how much of a difference those minor changes make. Now, in order to take this kind of maybe to the next level and make that bird kind of stand out from the background a little more, Lightroom has really, really great masks that you can add. So what I've found is, with either the subject selection, it does a really good job, or the background selection, it does a really good job. If you're doing like mountain ranges or something like that, the sky selection does a pretty good job too. Or you can make your own selection utilizing, the brush, the linear gradient, radial gradient, etc. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to select my subject, and you'll see that it does a pretty good job at just selecting the bird. And if you want to refine it, you can go subtract, maybe grab your brush and start painting away. I'm going to make that brush a little bigger. Yeah, the other way here, a little bigger. And maybe, oh, I grabbed my first stroke instead of adding new ones. Make it smaller as I get closer to the bird here. There we go. Maybe on this side, I'm not gonna spend too much time here perfecting this. You know what, we actually, we're gonna have to add this back in because it looks like when my brush was freaking out in the beginning, I had made an accidental stroke. Okay, so as you can see in the red, that's what this mask is selecting. And you can go ahead and uncheck show overlay if you don't want that to be showing all the time. From here, I might, let's see, I might go ahead and I want that bird to just be a little more crisp than the rest of the image. So for the texture, I'm going to actually bring this up to 10. For clarity, I'm going to bring this up to 10 as well, because remember, in the global effects we reduced it by 10, so we want to bump that up to where it was normal. And then dehaze, I want to actually bring this up by 15 because I don't want that atmospheric, that atmosphere to come into the bird. I want it all kind of in the background, you know what I'm saying? So that is, we had it at -5 on the global, bring it back 15. On average, we get, or if you total it all, we get a +10 on there, which is really nice. So this kind of shows you just those little details that or little touches we did to the bird, the kind of effect it has. So that's without it, that's with, without, with. So it just brings a little more contrast to the bird here. The other thing that we want to do is maybe darken the background. So we could start, create a whole new mask and select background, or we could take this one and go duplicate and invert mask. So now this is going to touch everything that this other mask did not have selected. So you can kind of see a little bit. I think we'll go to our brush here and we'll paint out what we had on the bird here. It looks like we had some selected, so just make some more refinements to this one. So now that we got our background pretty much selected, what I do want to do on this guy, make sure, yep, it looks like everything is reset, so that's good. In here, since we just want to darken that background, we're just going to take the exposure and move it down, be like 1/3 of a stop. And that really makes that bird stand out a little more. The last thing that you could do is we can make those eyes pop a little more. And by doing that, we could take the radial brush and just kind of, paint it over the eye here. And really zoom in so that we get all that eye. Maybe decrease the feathering a bit. And we also want to copy that. And, oh, not sure what I did. I turned it black and white. That is not what we would want. Okay, so we'll take this, we'll copy it, and drag the other one over here, kind of refine that so that we're only getting that eye. Okay, good enough. And with these eyes, we might want to maybe bring up the highlights, bring down the shadows, give it a little more of that contrast, you know, darken them a bit. And where's clarity? We'll go ahead and add clarity. And then we'll also, again, we'll add some of that dehaze. So now you can kind of see before, after. It just kind of makes them dark and pop a bit more. If you really want, just for fun, maybe add in some saturation. Because why not? There you go. It doesn't do too much, but if we go ahead and turn off all of our masks here, you'll see where we started, and that's what we have. Doesn't do a whole lot, but I think it adds something. So that's kind of it for this birdo. Now, if we wanted to take this and apply it, you know, for example, I've got 6 different shots here that are very, very similar. If we want to go ahead and apply this to all of them, go back into our developer setting here, make sure everything is checked. You might not want to hit, you might not want the crop checked, but if you did, you could certainly check all that, and then copy. And then what we'll do is we'll go back out, we'll select all, but the image that we had already done. Now with all of them selected, we'll go back into the developer and we'll paste them. So Command V. And boom, you'll see as we loop through these, oh, that one might need a little more work, but as we loop through them, they look pretty good. Obviously, you know, on the birds with, you know, where the eyes are in different locations, you will have to go through and edit this mask for the eyes. So obviously, in this case, we only have one eye. So we'll delete one of those, bring that over, and boom. The cool thing about the selection masks of like the object or the background or the sky, you know, the newer Lightroom Classic will make that a smart mask and will change depending on the picture that you paste it on. So it's not going to be the same exact mask each time, which is really, really neat. So this, as you can see, only selected bird or the background on that one. And if we went to the next image, you can see, boom, it kind of, well, because we didn't have that, we had that brush. Not rename. If we turn that brush stroke off, you can see that it kind of changes the mask each time, which is really neat. And you'll have to go in here and delete that one. We'll move this up here. I think that's pretty solid. So you might want to expand it a bit, but that looks good. And yeah, I hope that answers or should, you know, I hope you learned something out of that. If nothing else, this is kind of how I've done it. If you've got other ways, I would love to hear. And yeah, we'll see you on the next one. Peace.